Welcome to How to Prepare and Present Powerful Career-Enhancing Presentations. You are smart enough to know that it doesn't matter how well educated, intelligent, ambitious you are, unless you can clearly, concisely, and credibility communicate, you will not get the career advancement you want and deserve. And the higher up the corporate ladder you go, the more important presentation skills become. In case we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Patricia Fripp. There is a very important team member who you're about to meet who will handle your questions and tell you how to interact with us. Take it away, Paul.
Hello everyone. On your screen you will see a chat window. Within this window you can ask your short, specific questions that will be answered throughout the presentation. Each time that you see a question mark during the presentation, I will read the questions submitted at that time. If we do run out of time, Patricia will answer your questions offline via email. In case you are not familiar with Patricia Fripp, you are really in for a treat. She is one of the country's leading authorities on presentation skills. As you may have noticed by her accent, Patricia comes from England. She arrived in America at 20 years old with no contacts and only $500 in her pocket. She is now a Hall of Fame keynote speaker, in-demand executive speech coach, sales presentation skills trainer, and online learning expert. Kiplinger's Personal Finance magazine wrote, "The sixth best way to invest in your career is to learn presentation skills from Patricia Fripp." She was also elected the National Speakers Association's first woman president. As you will later hear, Patricia is virtually everywhere through her interactive online training platform, Fripp VT. Back to you, Patricia.
Thank you, Paul. Let's look at the objectives of our conference. Certainly, we want to shorten the time it takes for you to prepare a presentation. Organize your content in a simple speech structure that is logical and conversational. We want to increase the impact of the opening and conclusion of your presentation. The first 30 seconds and the last 30 seconds has a lot of impact. Create stories and examples that are memorable. Then keep it going. We want you to be able to connect with both technical and non-technical audience members. Speak in a way that enhances your audience's ability to see your presentation. Build credibility through your word choices. Deliver your message with ease to 550 or 500. The principles you're about to hear, they work exactly the same in conversations as with all presentations. It can be job interviews, reporting to your manager, department meetings, board meetings, training sessions, conference presentations. All the techniques work the same. One morning I opened my email and the email said, "Dear Patricia, I'm a big fan of yours. May I interview you for my blog?" I don't know about you, but I am a short-term project person. And I was involved in creating my virtual training program, which was an enormous project. And I was doing my very best to not be distracted. I was about to send him my standard at the time email that said, "I'm honored, I'm flattered, I would enjoy being interviewed. However, can you contact me in 3 months?" Before I hit send, I thought, well, let's check out his website. And as you can see, he is movie star handsome. And I am the first to admit, at times I am incredibly shallow. I picked up the phone and said, "What is an Emmy Award-winning TV interviewer and game show host doing being one of my fans?" Naturally, he got his 30-minute interview. And then he said, "Patricia, this information is great. However, come on. What is the number one secret of preparing and presenting a powerful presentation? And I said, oh, there's no one secret. And then it hit me. A brand new Frippicism was about to fall flawlessly from my lips. And I said, of course, there is no one secret. However, if there were, it would be that your subject is of interest to your audience. And this is what we have to do, is learn to make our subject tie into our audiences. Every conversation or presentation, formal or informal, needs to be interesting, entertaining. Now, that does not mean hysterically funny, but part of the delivery has to be interesting. Your word choices, how you move, educational, and then, of course, inspiring. Whether you are teaching, training, or perhaps selling your ideas for your project, we want it to be inspiring, and so that our audience or the person we are talking to is more inclined to say yes to us. In this presentation, what we will be doing is looking at the techniques and the words that go into a dynamic and powerful presentation and take a closer look. It's what I call put the techniques under the magnifying glass. Our agenda, very simply, how you connect to your audience. Because remember, we have to make our subject of interest to them. How do you structure in an easy, logical way? We have our formal presentations. However, we also have frequent, unplanned, informal presentations. Perhaps you're in a meeting and your manager says, hey, Julie, I didn't know you're going to be here. Can you come up and give us 10 minutes on your latest project? You have from the 8th row up to the front of the room to prepare. When you have a simple structure in the back of your mind, you can do that and be impactful. And when you get the reputation, wow, she didn't know she was on the program and she was dynamic, that's when the world knows you really are a powerful presenter. How do we open? We'll look at some of the options and actual words that you might use in your formal and informal presentations. Your stories and examples, how to make them more meaningful, memorable, and indelible on your audience. And then specificity, because specificity builds your credibility and you are living in a world of specifics. And then a few techniques on how you can deliver. We have to imagine that there is a member of our audience who is thinking, so what? Who cares? What's in it for me? Why should I listen to you? Because I hate to tell you, but there usually is at least one person. Again, we speak as an audience advocate. We look at our content from the point of view of the listener. We are going to connect with our audience, again, 1, 5, 50 or 500, two ways. Emotionally and intellectually. If you want to be persuasive, your argument, your presentation needs to be logical, intellectual. However, we make the connection through the emotion. Think of it this way. Logic makes you think. Emotion makes you act. If we work on the principle that everyone is more interested in themselves than us, we will not go wrong. And one important way to help your audience tie into your message and to find a connection and for you to emotionally connect is what I call the you versus I ratio or balance. Because there are the three ways you're going to emotionally connect. First, eye connection. And you notice I am saying connection rather than contact. Eye connection means you're making a deeper connection than contact. So for example, if, as in the image here, you were just talking informally across the desk, you're going to look at both individuals equally, even if one is more important. For a thought, an idea, or a phrase, you're going to look at them for a few seconds. Also, the IU ratio imbalance. For example, you're not going to say, I am going to talk about. It's what you will hear, what you will learn. And through your stories and examples. So the eye connection is best, remember, for a thought, an idea, or a phrase. This is easier to do with a small group. However, if you have a larger audience, I recommend you deliver your opening line to one person you're actually looking at. And you can certainly, even with 500 people, with your glasses, at least for me, you can see most faces. Certainly you are going to look at areas. So you might be focusing on one person, but piece of the pie, eye contact around the audience, and they will all feel the speaker is looking and connecting to me. Now, this is whenever you see a question mark in our PowerPoint, this is when we will answer any questions you submit. Short and specific to what we have. Now at this point I don't see any, so we will keep going. Anytime there is a question mark, if I see that your questions are in the Q&A box, Paul will read them to us. The 3 key elements to your presentation. Very simply, the content. What it is you are going to talk about, what you're going to discuss, your content matter. And may I suggest at this point, you are working not on a PowerPoint presentation because the creative process is messy. With a flip chart, a whiteboard, a yellow pad, write down the elements or the stories or the examples, the statistics that are going in your presentation. Then you look at the structure. Think of your speech structure as the skeleton under the flesh of your words. How do you organize it? And when you're confident with of course, what you're going to say, the speech structure, then we're going to work on some scripting and then the delivery. You don't know me very well, but perhaps you won't be surprised because often I have clients come to me and say, Patricia, we've got our presentation, just work on the delivery. To which I usually say, why would you want to perfect a badly structured, poorly scripted presentation? Now, of course, you can guess I'm a little cheeky. However, the point is, I am not saying your presentation is poorly scripted and structured. However, before we work on the delivery, you have to look back. Another problem that many people have, they think once they have created their presentation, they're done. No, you're halfway done. Now you have to get it into your body. Now, as you put what's going in your presentation, we're going to build your presentation about a premise or a big idea or your central theme, your dominant thought, whatever you want to call it, the big idea. And every presentation is built around your premise, your central theme. When I work with clients, I usually say, if you had one sentence, rather than 45 minutes, what would you say? If they answer in a paragraph, you haven't focused your thinking tight enough. So let's look at the premise statement. In the dictionary, it says it's a basis of argument leading to a conclusion. So very simply, look at what is the big idea. And then your talking points are going to prove your premise. They're going to make your case. Here is a very simple formula, because what you might find with many of your presentations, you have a classic presentation. So for example, although this presentation is not exactly the same as I might deliver tomorrow, the content that I draw from is the same. However, we want to focus on each audience by itself. And perhaps this formula will help you focus your thinking. It does not make sense when we first introduce it. Every, can, subject of your talk, or the result, how, and then your points of wisdom, which is what I call your talking points. This doesn't make sense until we fill it in. So let's have a look. All right. Every IEEE professional can better prepare and present powerful, persuasive presentations. Now, I say better prepare because I know you probably are somewhat of an expert in your own field. So I am not saying you're not a great presenter. Hopefully, these ideas are designed to help you become even better. If I made that statement to you conversationally, you'd think, I want to do that. How do I do it, Patricia? One, very simply by designing your presentation focused on the audience. Remember, we speak as an audience advocate. Two, structuring your presentation more conversationally. Because if we were having a conversation, I said, you ask me, what's your subject? I'll tell you. You say, well, how do I do that? And I'd say, well, first of all, Julie, you have to design your presentation focused on the audience. Then you're going to be structuring your speech more conversationally. And you'd say, well, what do you mean by that? All right. So what we are doing is answering the questions that an audience would think. You're going to then add memorable stories and razor sharp specificity and build rehearsal into your everyday life. And you might say, Patricia, I am a busy person. Even when I have an important presentation, I can't lock myself in the boardroom for an hour and a half every day. No, you might not be able to. However, you can walk up to your friends at the water fountain or in the cafeteria and say, have I ever told you the story about when I? So you are practicing segments of your conversation conversationally with your friends at dinner, with your family at the dinner table. So this is the Fripp speech structure. The first 30 seconds and the last 30 seconds have the most impact. You do not necessarily write your opening first unless you have some classic openings that you're familiar with, that you like, that you use, or you want to adopt that we are offering to you. Always think, what is the audience thinking coming in? Remember, you're thinking as an audience advocate. Then you will, from your opening, somehow introduce your premise or step into the body of your presentation. Then your points of wisdom. You are about to hear 3 different formulas. They do not necessarily have to be in every presentation. These are just techniques for you to be aware of. So very simply, a classic way you introduce an idea. Then, as you say, you might give an explanation. What do you mean by that? Give an example. And then an application. So I might introduce a very simple idea, such as make sure your conversations have a high you versus I balance or ratio. So, for example, an exclamation might be, as you're aware, everyone's more interested in themselves. So if you say, what you will learn, what you're about to experience. Thank you for attending our action-packed seminar, that you are engaging the audience more than saying, I am going to talk about what I would like to do first. And then, so that is an example. Now, an application. Even with your emails, if you want to write what you're going to say and then revisit. So what you might say, I am sending you. You might say, thank you for requesting this special report. You will find it attached to this email. So you can rewrite even in your emails, because we're building rehearsal for these principles into our everyday life. From one chunk to another, we have a seamless transition. That could be silence. It could be, and the second strategy too, or the third idea could also be movement. You move from one part of the stage to the other. These are chunks of content. So your presentation is made out of chunks. Now, very often you're going to look at your content from the historical standpoint. Perhaps you're introducing a new proposal and you might say, in the past, this is what we did and it worked superbly well. However, as we look at where we are, this technology no longer can keep up with the amount of work we are doing. We are introducing and recommending this program, and we can look forward to this happening. By the end of the year, this should happen. Perhaps your whole presentation, the whole structure is going to be about a timeline. Then another way to consider is perhaps you're talking about regionally, a proposal or information or different teams. Perhaps you're looking at local, national, international. You always go from small to large. Then it's a good idea to do a review, and do the review based on your premise. So I could say with a rhetorical question, how do we better prepare and present powerful career enhancing presentations? 1, now I'm going to do a review. Then you open for questions. One mistake that many professionals make is they close on the questions. It's very good if it is appropriate for you to give them a timeline. I certainly will be here during the lunch break if you have any more questions. At the moment, we have 5 minutes for your short, specific questions. Notice you want short, specific questions. And then close on a high. You certainly include Q&A if it's appropriate. However, you don't close on it because your last words linger. We want to come out punching. Let's look at your first 30 seconds. Most professionals are fine once they get started. Many of my clients are scientists and engineers, CEOs, brilliant individuals. They're great once they get going about what they're experts on. Very few know how to open and conclude, which is why we give a major focus in this presentation. You have many options. The first one could be a question. You can actually ask a question. For example, you might say, have you ever... Now I'm going to use very simple examples. I'm sure some of yours would be more complex. You could say, have you ever stood up to speak and were speechless? What I recommend you do is say, how often have you stood up in front of an audience and been speechless? And the reason we say how often is because if this happened once and our audience member lived through it, they don't care about their solution. If it's happened multiple times, they really want to know. See the subtle difference? Or it could be a rhetorical question. If I were to ask you, is 2016 the year you aim double the power of your presentation skills? Perhaps you'd say yes. Perhaps you'd say no. Most likely you would say, Patricia, I would love it to be. Can you tell me how? Well, congratulations. You're at the right place at the right time. And let's roll up our sleeves. In the next 90 minutes, we will look at 4 specific ways you can better prepare and present. So can you see from the opening, you transition into the body of your speech? Interesting statistic or little known fact. You probably have statistics and fascinating facts within the body of your presentation. Why not bring it up front? And what I suggest you do is add an emotion to it. Would it interest you to know? Would it amaze you to know? Would it surprise you to know? Would it shock you to know? So put the emotion before the statistic. And when you add the emotion, pause for a few seconds. Now the audience knows, oh, I have to pay attention. She's asking me a question. You can make a statement. Whatever is your point of view on the subject. It never ceases to amaze me that intelligent, Well-educated and ambitious professionals frequently overlook developing the number one skill that is absolutely guaranteed to position them ahead of the crowd, namely developing the ability to stand up and speak eloquently with confidence, or at very least stagger to their feet and say anything at all. Congratulations. Obviously, you realize the importance of powerful presentations. So you can see that is another way, a statement, a story, or an example. Your story or example has to lead into the subject of your speech. You don't just tell a great story if you can't transition in, or it might be a quote. When you are starting with a quote, I suggest it is not one that is so well known the audience could almost mouth it with you, because we don't want to flavor the first 30 seconds of the presentation. Oh, this is nothing new. I'm familiar with this. So, and certainly use a quote from your grandmother, your father, your mother, your first boss, people they won't ever meet. However, that quote inspired you, it could inspire them. Transport the audience. And this is great with a story, especially if it's a personal story. You can transport the audience with phrases such as, let's go back to 2003. Or, if you had met me the first day I went to work for. And this way, even though you're telling your own personal story, you are taking the audience with you. Here are some words that you can use with your business presentations. And this is if this was a small meeting or a report to your manager. The purpose of this meeting is let's get to the point. You've given me 8 minutes and I'm not wasting it. Thank you for the opportunity to present the findings of the ABC team. You will remember at our last meeting, this is putting your remarks into context. And that might be the past, present, future approach. Thank you for support with. If you're looking for funding, not bad to thank them for support they've already given you. As we look forward to, again, these lines are great get to the point opening lines. They can also be used as a transition within your presentation. We have an amazing opportunity. Now, this is when you want to inspire your team to look forward to something that might be a little inconvenient or they might learn. We're selling the outcome. There has never been a more perfect time to. Now, this is a great way to sell a project. This is a great line to motivate your team. Imagine. Whenever you say the word imagine, you are emotionally engaging the audience, and you are either going to take them into the future to paint a scene in the future that perhaps your new technology, your new strategy will take you to, or it might be any scene that you want them to go somewhere else, and imagine, and you're going to take them to somewhere positive. Would it interest you to know? Remember how we used this with interesting statistics or little known facts. Would it surprise you to know? If I were to ask you, you've already heard samples of how you might use that. Thank you for your business. If you were talking to a client, it's not bad to start and conclude with thank you for your business and congratulations. In my role as a sales trainer, I always recommend that if you're talking to a prospect, congratulate them on what they are proud of first. So certainly keep that. There are many situations in your life, if someone's just got promoted, or if you're talking to a team that's won an award, start with congratulations. Again, everyone is more interested in themselves than they are in us. Starting with congratulations is a very good strategy. You have an awesome responsibility. We have a challenge in the form of. So hopefully those will help you, give you a way to trigger your creativity. We want to close on a high. So just quickly in a review, you sum up with a rhetorical question based on your premise. How do we? If you're making a recommendation, you perhaps want to say, our next logical step is to. Some call for action. So, for example, one of my call for actions for you would be take the handout, take your notes from here, and teach somebody else. If you want to reinforce what you know, teach somebody else what you think you learned. Circle with the opening. There is a very powerful technique that you might start a speech, a report, an article, or a book with you closed with the same idea as you opened. It is a rhetorical question. It is a circular technique. So it's not a absolute must, but I would encourage you to always look at how you opened your presentation before you conclude, and your last words linger. Make them yours. So for example, if you're doing Q&A, you might then close with remember and a powerful phrase. Your audience will always remember what your last words were. And then we have the circular technique, just to remind you, tie your presentation in a bow. Now, Paul, here is another question mark. However, I can't see any questions unless you're seeing something I don't. So, oh, we do have, good. So, Paul, why don't you read the question to me? Take it away, Paul.
All right, this question is from Shayna. Does a good presenter let the audience ask questions as they have them or save them for the end? And back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you were delivering a technical presentation, Shayna, when you go through the end of each chunk of content, especially with smaller meetings, I would definitely engage the questions at each chunk of content. Now, the only difficulty with this is that you have to keep track of the time that you have. But, however, that is a very good technique after each chunk. And then again, if you have time at the conclusion or when you're getting ready for the conclusion. So that is perfect. I don't think there are any more, Paul. So let's move on. Thank you, Shayna, and please, we welcome. That was a wonderful, short, specific question. That's exactly how you asked them of us. Good. Let's go to storytelling. Robert McKee, the screenwriting teacher, said, stories are the creative conversion of life itself into a more powerful, clearer, more meaningful experience. And stories have so much power because as a child, no matter what culture we grew up in, we always heard some version of clean your teeth, get in your jammies, go to bed, mummy, daddy, grandmother, auntie will come read your story or tell you a story. A story is a reward. However, stories also explain the complex. Stories help clarify complex. They help paint pictures of the future. They really make an emotional connection and help the audience see what you're saying. The audience will remember what they see. And what we want to do is we want to populate your story with flesh and blood characters that other people relate to. So, for example, if you're telling a story about a project manager, Give that person a name. Mary was a seasoned project manager. Now, by just adding the backstory of seasoned, you know whatever action she took or recommendation she made is probably valid, because the story would be very different if she was a brand new project manager and this was her second day on the job. So you're giving a backstory and a name to your character. And here is a formula for story success. And this comes from every movie, and you know Hollywood knows how to tell a good story. Well, I should say perhaps not some of the foreign films with subtitles, but every Hollywood blockbuster. A day in the life, you are introduced to the protagonist, the character, the hero, and then something happens. This in a movie is called the inciting incident. And the result of that is, and the result of that is. So obviously the stories that you're going to use, we need to know who it's about, where they start, and what happens. So it could be as simple as our team were working, so we're working harmoniously until we had a brand new manager. That something happened. And what was the result of that? And the result of that. And so it goes on. Another story formula, and these go together, is the situation. What is the help? So, for example, I had a friend who was a sales manager of the Fairmont Hotel who called and said, Patricia, help! As you know, I'm a great salesperson one-on-one. However, I have to deliver a presentation to a group, a convention committee, and they're considering bringing their convention to San Francisco. I have to talk to them, and you know I'm great one-on-one, but I'm really nervous. What do I do? This was the situation. This was the challenge. And whatever challenge that your recommendation is going to make is going to, of course, take that I'm so worried to make it. We're going to, of course, have a solution, and then we're going to have success. This is the formula. So with my friend at the Fairmont, I asked him the questions we should always ask ourselves. 1, who am I addressing? Convention committee. 8 people. 2, how long do you have to talk? 8 minutes. 3, what is your big idea? In which case, what are you selling? He said, I'm not selling the Fairmont, because if they come to San Francisco, they are coming to the Fairmont. However, they're seriously considering San Diego. We never knock our competition. We never knock another proposal. What we do is perfectly position ours compared to the others. And then I said, let me get this right. All right, you have 8 minutes. You're selling San Francisco. How much is it worth to the Fairmont if you get the business? $500,000. Now, do you realize that is $1,048 and I think 62 cents a second, even when you pause? How had you intended opening? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be showing you around. I hope you're having a good time. I said, look, you've wasted $20,000. You haven't said anything. Why don't you say, in the next 8 minutes, which means I have honored the time you've given me, in the next 8 minutes, you will decide the best decision your association and your members can make is to bring your convention to San Francisco and the Fairmont Hotel. So can you see that is you focused? We're painting a scene, and then you're getting to the point. I am helping you see how he got to the success with my example. The transition line from the opening was, San Diego is a magnificent destination and you should go there another year. However, this year, you should come to the Fairmont because specific, 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 specific. Now you've got an emotional opening, a logical, intellectual body of the speech, and then rest assured the 836 members of the Fairmont Hotel will be here to serve you. So I hope you get the idea of that. Now, are there any questions about stories or about your openings? Good. Paul, would you like to read the question from David? Take it away, Paul.
Yes, David said, I believe audience connection is the key characteristic that distinguishes a memorable presenter from an average one. Are audience members actively participating or simply listening to the speaker a good sign of an engaging presentation?
Thank you. There are multiple ways to engage and to see if the audience is with you. One, if they're nodding. Two, we used to think if their eyes were looking down, they weren't engaged. Now we have the complexity of they might be tweeting or taking notes on their mobile devices. And one way, David, that you do keep the audience actively engaged is to add levels of variety. So in a presentation, you're going to move, you're going to stand still. You're going to have slides, turn them off and just speak. You're going to be in the front of the room, walk into the body of the room. You can engage them individually in smaller meetings. So yes, we always need to find ways to engage because as we know, the key idea is always that we have to speak as an audience advocate and make our content applicable to them, of interest to our audience. Paul, are there any? I don't believe there are any more questions. Jump in if there are. No, so let's move right along. Good. These are techniques that I consider advanced. They are not complex. However, I do not know of any other coach or speaker that puts quite the priority on them or any at all. And this is one, how you present information to be seen. For example, in most of my live presentations, I bring people up to the front of the room for mini coaching. If we were together in a room, I would be asking you to get up and deliver a part of your presentation, and what I would do. Now let's go back. My finger clicked away a bit fast. I'd be asking you to come and deliver your opening few lines. So this young lady got up and said, my dad walked into a diner, looked at the waitress and thought, that's my wife, in 1946. And I said, I'm sure this is a great story. However, you need to put it together in a different way. Because if you said, in 1946, my dad walked into a diner, the picture changed. You do not have to have been born in 1946 to know this is the end of World War II. You've seen movies, you've heard stories from your parents and grandparents. You know what America, your town and your family was experiencing after World War II. Now, her dad, in my mind, and remember, it doesn't matter if it's reality, it's how the audience sees the picture. I see him in uniform. He's a soldier. And if he's a soldier, I know he has had experiences that he will never talk about. He'll never tell his family, his wife, his children that aren't even born yet. He will spend time with perhaps his comrades he went to war with, but even they will acknowledge their experiences, but they probably won't talk about them. I am emotionally connected to anybody who serves our country in any branch of the armed forces. So I'm already rooting for him to get the girl. He walked into the diner and looked at the waitress. Now, I bet he sat at the counter. And I know what she looked like. In my picture, she's blonde. She has a pinny over her dress. She probably has a little cap. maybe a hairnet if her hair's long on the back. She's wearing thick, rimply shoes because she's standing up 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And I bet she says, "Would you like some pie and coffee, honey?" And he thinks, that's my wife. You see, when you present the formula very simply of when was your situation, where was your situation, who is in the story, and what happened, and then of course as it fits in your presentation what was the result of that, that also helps the audience see what you're saying. So very simple formula: when, where, who, what happened. This also works with individual sentences. For example, if we were to turn on CNN or read in the Wall Street Journal, we might hear or read a phrase sounding like this. President Obama delivered a speech at Yale University, or President Obama delivered a speech on healthcare at Yale University yesterday. I suggest for impact it should be yesterday. Oh, recent history. At Yale University. Not been there, but I imagine great grounds, nice buildings. President Obama, oh, I know who that is, delivered a speech on healthcare. What he spoke about was more important than when it was yesterday or the day before, Yale or Harvard. That is the impact phrase. Put the impact phrase at the end of your sentences. They will be more remembered, because we want to be remembered and repeated. Now I'm just looking down to see, yes, I believe, Paul, there is another question. Would you like to read it to me, Paul?
Absolutely. We have a question from one of the members of the audience. Should we plan that we should have these many, for any given presentation, how many minutes they have, is there a minimum number of slides that they should have prepared for their presentation based on how much time they have? Patricia?
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for the question. In general, I would suggest that you have more slides with less content on. Now, we have plenty of slides in this presentation. A lot we move through very fast because we want to keep you engaged. It is more difficult online. There is no hard and fast rule. You use as many as you need. But remember, you are the star, not your PowerPoint. So when you are addressing the subject and you do not need what is on the screen, hit B for black on your computer, use a remote control to make sure that it is, bringing all the attention back to you. So thank you for that question. And let's see, I don't believe, and remember, we have one more. Does a good presenter let the audience ask questions as they have them? Okay, save them to the end. Yes, we did handle that. In your view, oh, here's another one from Mickey Young. I will. What do I believe about organizations like Toastmasters? Toastmasters are the least expensive way that you can practice your skills in a safe environment from work. I highly recommend you go to Toastmasters. Perhaps many of your companies actually have them, in which case I would absolutely say attend. And I first joined Toastmasters in 1975, cable car Toastmasters in San Francisco. So yes, and if you have a large company, certainly bring one in-house. And you might not even be a formal Toastmaster club, but you might, however, have a way to practice your own business presentations. So now we will go to the the way you add specificity. Are you guilty of the unconscious goof that ruins your credibility? And that is sloppy, non-specific language. The first and the naughty word, and I slap my clients' hands if they use the naughty word, which is STUFF, debris, rubbish. If the only time you should use this word is if you are talking about what you do for your turkey at Thanksgiving or Christmas. Avoid empty language. So specificity builds credibility. I would even challenge you, as I do all my clients, is when you say the word things, specifically what do you mean? Do you need a habit, a strategy, a technique, a formula, a suggestion, idea? What exactly do you mean? And when you're talking about, oh, I went to the meeting and got tons of business cards. No, you didn't. You would not have got out of the meeting room if you had a ton of business cards. No, add specifics. We went to the trade show and 532 people came to our booth. 100 of them were our existing clients. Give me some specifics that you could manage. That builds your credibility. And may I suggest, kind of, sort of, bunches, out there, lots, you guys, and finishing a sentence, you make a statement, then say, right, you're stepping on your impact phrase and you are looking less confident in your suggestions. So just be aware of sloppy language. And here is key. You will not improve what you are not aware of. Record your sides of conversations. Record when you're running a meeting. Record your rehearsals for an important presentation. Listen to what you are saying. Again, you do not improve what you're not aware of. Look at the power of verbs. Collect your favorite verbs and adjectives. And whenever you're writing copy, bring them out and use them. Now this technique comes from the world of comedy. Jerry Seinfeld said, I consider a good day's work if I work for an hour to take an 8-word sentence and edit it down to 5. In his case, it'll be funnier. In our case, it'll be more memorable. Because the idea of when, where, who, what happened, that comes from the world of comedy. If you think there's a setup phrase and a punch word or punch phrase that triggers the laugh. In business communication, it is a setup phrase and an impact phrase. And a comedian knows, don't step on your punch word, you kill your laugh. Also, we don't want to kill the impact by using the word today or right at the end of our sentence. Looking at Alfred Hitchcock, the great movie director, he said, a movie is like life with all the dull parts left out. In other words, when you are working on your stories, practice them conversationally, record them, and really edit them down to the nub. Take us straight to the scene. There I was, standing in. Now, this is another time to see, I will just look down, Paul, and see. I do not believe there are any questions that I have not answered at this point, so we'll move right along. We want to be, of course, aware of how long we are with you. Now, with your vocal variety. So once you've got your script, once you've got your outline, your structure, your stories, your opening lines, then you're going to build your PowerPoint. Then, of course, you will build in vocal variety. My friend who's an acting coach, Kay, said, Fripp, you've got $30 for a sentence. Words are $10 each. And you probably think, well, Patricia, sentences have more than 3 words. And that's the point. Not every word is of equal importance. So you need to put the emphasis on the $10 words. So, for example, General Eisenhower said, leadership is the ability to decide what has to be done and then get people to want to do it. And may I suggest you exaggerate in your rehearsal to get the difference in your body. You will never do anything that makes you feel like an idiot in front of an audience. Your rehearsal or with your friends, you can. $100 phrases are what I would consider the key ideas, the points of wisdom. And if you happen to be moving, stand still when you deliver that. That is a way to verbally underline it. So again, with your delivery, at the beginning, stand still. Even if you're going to move, stand still at the beginning. This represents the stability of your ideas, the company or the team that you represent. So yes, stand still. And then if you want to move, move with purpose. So the audience is very obvious. You intend moving. Again, if you're moving, you get to the point, stand still to emphasize the key idea. On transition from one idea to the next, or on a movement specific phrase, you say, as I walked into your building. Okay, that's movement specific if you want to move. You do not have to. You can gesture with your hand gestures, and there's still movement in your presentation. The great actor, British actor, Michael Caine said, rehearsal is the work, performance is the relaxation. And it's true. You will be more relaxed and be able to engage with the audience when you have your body in your body and you have rehearsed it. You certainly need to know exactly how you're going to open and conclude. I don't know if you're familiar with my brother Robert Fripp. He's a famous guitarist from King Crimson, played on David Bowie's Heroes. And I called him and he said, oh, sister, I'm just practicing my guitar while I'm watching a Steven Seagal movie. And I said, brother, you can't be focusing attention on both. And he said, oh, sister, what I have to do is build the muscle memory into my fingers. So as a musician builds the muscle memory into their hands, we need to build the muscle memory into our body as far as comfort of speaking and knowing exactly, if nothing else, how we're going to open and conclude. And remember, as Laurence Olivier said, the art is hiding the art. When you do this masterfully, people always say, Mary, I always thought you're the best speaker in our company, but wow, that was great. They don't know that you've incorporated some Frippy ideas. So the secret then is, obviously you were interested in the subject if you signed up for the webinar. The question, are you committed to? Because you must realize that all learning takes repetition and reinforcement. I hate to tell you, there's a dirty little secret in the training industry. And that is when you have a great speaker with great content, an audience that genuinely is interested, 2 weeks later, they've forgotten 70% of what they learned. So the best way is to find ways to incorporate what you have learned on an ongoing basis. Now, at this point, if there are any more questions, I will take them offline because we want to be respectful for your time. So we will give you my email address. Don't worry, you will within the next couple of days, every question will be answered. So if you are interested in the learning to be a great speaker, using the Fripp best ideas from 30 years of study, easily, conveniently, quickly, and cost effectively, we encourage you to take a trial of the Fripp virtual training. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can do this. If you love to text, you can text the word Fripp to 96,000 on your phone. And you can sign up and get a free chapter on openings, on stories, and on selling yourself and your ideas. You're welcome. It's a great follow-up. If you are certainly interested in, in that, and you're not going to go on, you can just go online to Fripp VT, and we have some very exciting news that, let's see, this, you'll fill in the form and you'll get your free trial. And Paul, we have an announcement because very soon, with our partnership with Extra Credits, we can give you your continuing education points. So Paul, can you take it away?
Yes, and it is indeed exciting news. Today or in the near future, through our partnership with Extra Credits, you can benefit from Fripp VT and earn professional development hours for your CEU recertification needs. You can check out the website at IEEE-custom-ed-solutions.org. Take your free trial also of Fripp VT, and Patricia and I are happy to answer any questions about this webinar content and Fripp VT with professional development hours. We would also love hearing your comments about how you felt Patricia's information will help you in your career too. Back to you, Patricia.
Thank you, Paul. So certainly feel free to contact me, pfripp@fripp.com. You might want to put IEEE in the subject line so you get your full attention. If you tweet, I'm at pfripp, and there's my phone number, 415-753-6556, and my website, fripp.com. You can find us multiple ways, as I say. And Paul told you we are happy to answer your questions. And remember, habits are like railway tracks. They take a long time to get into place. However, once they're in place, they will take you anywhere you want to go. Thank you so much for your attendance at our webinar on powerful, persuasive, career-enhancing presentations. We look forward to engaging with you and hearing your comments. Thank you.